National Housing Party, United Kingdom TV. And John Lawrence can't make it tonight, so I'm joined with the regular, incredible Paul Rimmer, and we've got a new addition to the party, Pete Lawrence from Cornwall. We're going to be talking about the repercussions from the general election, and Pete Lawrence bravely stood in the general election as an independent candidate, which he's going to be following on standing as a local candidate in Cornwall, which is going to be very exciting for the party. So yeah, John Lawrence can't make it with Paul Rimmer and Pete Lawrence. How are you today, Paul?
Well, there's been so many shocks, hasn't there? We're talking about the general election. I mean, that was a blowout. I'll tell you what disappointed me about the general election was the Workers' Party. They only stood 150 candidates, which was disappointing. And George Galloway disappeared. The Reform Party exceeded all expectations. And what happened to the Tory Party? But we're going to be looking at independents as well. But I'm also reeling about what's happening across the Atlantic. That Joe Biden signature. Was that letter fake? It was absolutely a fake. And what's happening in America is totally bizarre, and it will affect us here.
What's this letter, Paul? Can you explain to the audience?
Well, Joe Biden put in a letter, disappeared, put in a letter saying he'd resigned. But it's not his signature on the letter. There was no presidential seal. It was not an official letter. It's just a forgery. So the president of the United States has disappeared, and it's been covered by a forgery. And now we got cackling Camilla claiming to be the leader of the free world. Everything is in chaos. It's absolute madness. But Peter, over to you.
Well, it just gets lower and lower and more clown world every single day, doesn't it? Can't believe it. And talking of clown world, I mean, what an election, really. I mean, I did my math on it, and Labour were voted in with 13.8% of the population. So we got a majority Labour government, 411 seats, with just over 10% of the people voting for it. So first past the post is just the gift that keeps on giving. You know, and the stats go on with it, really. And, you know, you think about what Reform got with 4 million votes and, you know, 4 or 5 seats. It's just crazy. It's such a gatekeeper for the establishment. It's unbelievable. You have to get so big to get anywhere with it. You know, it has got to change. But, of course, turkeys don't vote for Christmas, do they? So somebody's got to get in first before we can get the changes through. But yeah, it is. But anyway, from a personal experience, running was extremely beneficial. And, you know, I'd have to say to any of the nationalists that do decry the electoral route, you know, as long as you're not bare bones, absolutely skint, then it doesn't really cost that amount. I mean, my whole campaign cost me £1,500. That's including the nomination fee and 50,000 flyers and a few roadside boards. Now, I did receive a couple of £100 in donations, for which I was very grateful for. But even setting that aside, if we take £1,500 as the cost to run for a candidacy like that and get 50,000 leaflets out, even if you had to do that once every 5 years for a general election campaign and once every 5 years for your local election campaign, you're talking about a £3,000 cost spread over 5 years. Well, that's £600 a year. That's £12.50 a week. So for a candidate who can self-fund or has got access to a few funds or could crowdfund it, it really doesn't cost that much to stand. And I have got a message out there, and from a standing start with as a complete unknown, I didn't come last in my constituency, and I nearly got 1% of the vote at 498 votes. So, you know, I consider it money well spent, even from a marketing perspective, and my message has gone out there. And, you know, the message about getting out of the 1951 Refugee Convention was out there. Quite a strong nationalist policy about only having a third child benefit for Indigenous British people to address the falling birth rate got out there. And I didn't have too much pushback. I had 2 or 3 emails asking me to justify what they considered an ethnic British citizen was. So we had to get into some genetic study on that. But other than that, you know, and I came back with quite a lengthy post against that chap, sort of defending indigenous protectionism against accusations of racism was the name of the post, and he accepted it, and we ended on good terms. So I think of the pushback that I had, 1 or 2 of them were just asking for clarification anyway. So anyway, that's the state on the ground down here in Cornwall, and it was a good experience.
What was the 2 things, what first come to your head, the 2 things that you learned from the whole experience of standing in a general election as an independent candidate, Pete?
Well, how organised the Labour Party was quite apparent. When I started attending the hustings, the candidate turned up with an underling or an apprentice already in tow. So this is a part of the Labour youth being trained up to get experience of the election cycle, of all the processes required, and already getting trained up and experience for that. Their garden boards were out straight away. They were the only people in my constituency who had tellers outside of the polling station. And actually, that was a new one on me, because first time I run, I didn't even know what a teller was. And there was some comment going around on social media that Labour were trying to fix the election.
Explain to the viewers what a teller is, Pete.
Well, a teller is a person who works for a political party, and anybody standing is allowed 1 teller outside every polling station, and they report back to the party as to who has voted. So if you're a member of a party, the party will obviously have the database of everybody in that ward who is due to vote, and throughout the day, the teller will collect the electoral number of everyone exiting, and they will relay that information back in real time to the command centre. And from that information, they will deduce who hasn't voted yet on that day in that ward.
Yeah, and then they will go around and knock on the door to all the people who haven't voted. That's what they do.
Either do that, or
truth
send
is,
them a text.
Just 1 second, Peter. The truth is, with that, it's even more profound with the Labour Party. I've stood for elections since really the last 25 years, and you begin to realise that the Labour Party is an electoral machine.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing they do, they identify their supporters. Now they have, because a lot of their constituency is the public sector unions, the National Teachers Union, people who work in the NHS, people who work in local government. Don't forget, there's more than 3 million people working for the government on the government payroll, and they are inclined to vote Labour. Not only them, but their families as well. And many of them are committed to the Labour machine, and they will go out and they will put people, they will find out who their supporters are, and they put them on the postal vote. And those who aren't on the postal vote, they'll whip them round to come and vote on election day. So they're guaranteeing themselves at least 5 million votes. And this is why they've won so many. It's because the actual votes for Labour went down, dramatically went down. I mean, Keir Starmer, his vote fell by 10,000. In my own constituency of Riverside in Liverpool, Labour's vote was down 13,000. But because they held on to their core constituency, whereas the Tories lost theirs to get Reform, that 4.2 million votes that the Reform got, a third of them came from the Tories, and a lot of the Tory votes didn't turn out. The Tory constituency is not as committed as the Labour vote, especially because Labour had been out of power for so long. They were desperate to get into power. And this is what you're up against. But it's even worse than that. The media, the BBC, many of the newspapers, many of the independent channels like LBC and the other, even big tech, they're all in with the Labour Party. They work hand in glove to push the Labour Party message. So it's a real uphill struggle to defeat the Labour Party. But go on, Pete.
Yes, well, I agree with all of that. And when you look at the amount of votes that Labour actually won with, under 10 million, it was the lowest winning vote share in history. So it really was quite an astonishing election. But the second point that I noticed was really just getting a grip of the timescale involved. So I kind of got a feeling that you can do well with the right idea if that will push you on with the right idea. If you can really just nail it down and get out there with the right message, you will get traction. But the timescales involved are long. There's no shortcut here. You've got to be out leafleting, building rapport in your ward, and you've got to be looking ahead 4, 8 years, 12 years. Populist movements, they are going to take several years to build. I know that's frustrating to hear, but all we can do is get the position right and then hope to poach in people from the other sides, because I believe that is going to be possible. Perhaps we'll move on and talk a bit about that in a bit. But yeah, back over to you, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I really think that this general election, the overall picture is very positive, because you mentioned the two-party first past the post system at its best, but really it's actually on its last legs, and the Tory party completely collapsed. And as you've both said, the Labour Party vote was like the smallest vote ever in history. And all it's got to take is building something in whatever area you stand in, and for something for the public to vote for. Because the reason Reform didn't win many seats is because they haven't got any local councillors anywhere, and they will probably go on and do that, but I doubt they're going to do it in the big cities. And this is where we can come in. And other areas around the country, there will be parts where they won't be standing. But funny enough, I've been knocking on doors for the last 2 days. Tonight wasn't such as good night as last night, but I knocked on this door and it was a couple, very supportive, and they said, "Oh, I don't know, mate, I vote for Reform. I vote for Reform." I said, "Yeah, I mean, they're a bit soft." He said, "What do you think of Reform?" I said, "Well, they're a bit soft for me, mate." And his wife sort of like understood what I meant, and she said, "Oh, yeah, but we've got to start slowly." And I said, yeah, fair enough. I said, look, Reform probably won't be standing in this local election what I'm campaigning for. So, I might even put on my leaflet that I voted Reform in the mayoral election, because I think he wanted me to say that to him, like, "Oh, I did vote Reform." Do you know what I mean? Like, because he had no idea what our party's about. I gave him all the leaflets, but everything I said to him, I got 5 points on my leaflet. Housing crisis is a disgrace. They're housing refugees, and they're not even letting the working class go on housing waiting lists. Campaigning to take sex education out of schools, campaigning to stop all the war against the motorist things they've been doing, 20 mile an hour, ULEZ, congestion charge, LTNs. Also, I've got something about the anti-white agenda, because, as we all know, they're literally advertising for jobs, saying white people cannot apply for these jobs. And I actually talked to a couple of lefties yesterday. One of them worked for Transport for London. I couldn't believe he was agreeing with everything I was saying to him. He was like, had a big beard, long hair, completely lefty, but he just couldn't disagree with everything I was saying to him. And I told him about TfL advertising for jobs, saying white people can't apply for certain jobs in the Transport for London, that is. And he said, "Yeah, that's just unacceptable." And so, yeah, and then I had another woman, some lefty woman, and she was a cyclist extremist. And she was saying to me that London was built for the bicycle. I said, "You what?" I said, "London was built for the vehicle, not a bloody bike." "Oh, no, it wasn't." I said, "Listen, it was built for the horse and cart, a vehicle. All these roads and streets were built for horse and carts to get around." And I said to her, "Look, if you want the countryside, go and move in the countryside. This is the inner city." And it's just unbelievable. These people are just completely brainwashed and like focused on like her basically. She literally said to me, "I won't be happy until it's all bicycles." That's what she said to me. So that was an N next to her name straight away. And now I'm not going to bother with that door again. This is what you do. And, I'm getting through the list. It's a hell of a list. I've got 9,000 people to get around. So, I knock on the door and I say to them, "Look, I'm standing in an election. It's a bit early, over 18 months early, actually. And and I say, look, I've got to get around to 9,000 people. I've got to start early. Otherwise, you know, if you do it all in the last minute, like 3 months before, you can't make an impact. So it's a long-term plan. You get to know the people. You mark down your data. You know, yes, for they're going to vote for you. No, they're not going to vote. Maybe M for maybe. You know, maybe you might just give them a leaflet, put a GL. At least you know you've made contacts and you gave them a leaflet. And all this information helps when you get closer to the election. And then all the yeses, you go around to remind them. And if they're still enthusiastic, you get them on a postal vote. The most important thing. This is what Labour done. This is what Paul just said. They have got armies of postal voters. And these people regularly vote for Labour. And what they do, they phone them up. They text them, have you voted? And then once they say yes, they've got thousands and thousands of votes in the bag 3 weeks before the election's even started.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we got to do it. We can't complain about the postal vote. We need to embrace it. And this is what I'm doing. And I'm not going to say anything about any stats, but it's going well. My campaign is going very well. And I'm really looking forward to Pete's campaign. Pete's is next May, which is, you know, it's really, you've got to really get going really for that. I mean, you finalise the leaflets, the first recruitment leaflets, the warm-up leaflets. They're going to be going out soon. And I would advise you, Pete, to get your main leaflet out delivered before Christmas. And then you've got 3 months of solid canvassing, January, February, March. And you know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I think it's all looking positive. It's just a matter of getting people involved and trying to persuade people to stand in local elections. And we got someone in the chat there, and I wanted to speak to Rory. I've been trying to get a phone number for you, Rory. If you could email me your phone number to speak about local elections, that'd be great. He lives in Somerset area near you, not far from you, Pete.
Okay.
So, what's the latest in Liverpool, Paul?
Well, it was really interesting what you said there, Pat. There's going to be some really powerful local issues emerging. I mean, there's big issues and there's local issues, and they tie together. In Liverpool, the Labour vote went down substantially. It went down 15%. And there were two major reasons for that. One was the Muslims didn't vote for Labour. They switched en bloc from Labour to the Green Party. And that cost my local MP 15,000 votes. Now, the other big issue was the emergence of reform and the question of immigration, which is going to be a massive issue because there's more coming in now than ever. It's 1,500 a day now crossing the channel on these boats. And they need hotels. They've got to be put up. They've got to be looked after. They've got to have resources. And that's all going to be taken away from local people. They're going to ultimately, Labour are going to put them into social housing, which means that really the British are going to be dispossessed in their own country. We're going to be disenfranchised. And that will cause a lot of local friction. What you see in Ireland now is coming to Britain because Labour has basically taken the lid off and has just invited mass immigration. What we're going to get with the Labour Party is higher immigration, higher taxes. The Labour Party are about to raise the local council tax. They're going to revalue all the properties and revalue the level of taxation. And they're expecting a big bounty off that. But that's going to hit people who are struggling now with higher mortgages, pressure under wages, pressure for employment. There's a recession on the way. And in the middle of that recession, the Labour Party is going to increase local taxes on people. So there's going to be an utter rebellion about that. But another factor, which Pat alluded to, is the green agenda. Labour's going to go crazy on the green agenda. 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, new taxes on vehicles, new taxes on all sorts, the green agenda, and it's going to drive people up the wall. So these big three issues are there to exploit. Now, reform is still really in the making. We're not sure what it's going to do. Is it just Farage's fantasy sort of party, or is it going to develop local routes, local parties, local campaigns? But Farage doesn't really want that because he doesn't want the friction between the radicals at the bottom and the people at the top. It's a top-down party. We need to build a bottom-up party. We need to get people together, involved in local campaigns, issues that matter to real people, organise them and support them when they stand as candidates. So that's the way forward. We need to build up a bottom-up party. We need to organise the ordinary people of this country. Now, it's not going to be based... We're going to fight the anti-white agenda, but it's not going to be based on race. It's not going to be based on sectarianism. It's going to be based on a popular dissent. This is what's happened. I mean, Pat talked about the Tory vote collapsing. It didn't collapse. It halved, but it didn't collapse. The Tories basically scuppered reform by getting that 21% and getting those 110 MPs. If the Tory party vote had collapsed, reform were in. Reform needed another million or two votes to really rock Parliament, and they failed to get them. But it's all opening up now. And in the background is another massive issue, which is going to become bigger and bigger. This is war. Keir Starmer is a hawk. He's already sent British jets against Yemen. He's bombing the Muslim world already. He's only been there. Obviously, he hasn't even got his feet under the table. So Muslims are seeing this and seeing this guy is just a Zionist operative. And there's going to be a massive rebellion amongst the Muslim population in this country against the Labour Party. Because the Labour Party, Israel is presently at war with 7 Arab countries. And there's, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, Libya. They're attacking these countries. And the Muslims know this. We are basically ignorant of it, a lot of people, British people, but the Muslims in Britain know that their fellow Muslims are being murdered in the Middle East by Israel. And of course, in the Gaza, there's maybe 40,000 now people at the Gaza are being murdered by the Israelis. They've just attacked Khan Yunis with their jet planes. They've just attacked a highly populated civilian area with jet planes. They're just dropping bombs on civilians. It's a war crime. It's genocide which is going on. And the Muslims recognise this, and they're going to be really motivated against this Labour government. This Labour government is going to fall apart very quickly because it's making all the wrong decisions. Peter?
Well, it begs the question, how long is this government going to last? And what's going to overthrow it? And it's most likely going to be civil unrest that overthrows it by, the way we're going. And if we look at the green agenda that we briefly touched on, I mean, Ed Miliband was in his office 3 days before he passed 3 huge solar farms. One of them, the largest that's ever been passed in the UK at 2,800 acres. So it's absolute madness. He's talking about opening up more wind. So we're just, as we knew, we're just going to get more and more of the same. But this is what it's looking like, and it's not going to be pretty. We're just going to have higher and higher energy bills, more and more war, more and more immigration, more and more stress, and eventually something's got to give, hasn't it? So, and now hopefully that's where the silent majority will come in, because looking at the election again, 20 million people still didn't vote. So what are they thinking? And when you look back at the history of elections and the amount of votes required to win, we talked about Labour being under 10 million. Well, if you go back 4 or 5 elections, we're still only talking 12, 13 million. 15 million is definitely going to win you an election. So there's enough people sitting in reserve to actually give us a majority, let alone poaching, say, 20% from the Lib Lab Green Con and pinching 20% or aligning with some faction of reform. So we've actually got the right numbers for a party in the right part of the political spectrum, which is exactly where we're sitting, which is a kind of faith-based civic nationalism, but highly regulated with migration and immigration. It's something that recognises the ethno-national foundational basis of a state. And it wants a supermajority of that to be maintained. But a small amount of highly regulated, beneficial immigration, which benefits all races and all parties and all countries, is welcome. We're sitting in the right spot, especially with our faith-based underlining, and we need to draw the people in from the left and the right. And that's the issue that I have with reform. It's top-down. It's too far over to the Conservative Party. It's state-sanctioned. And unfortunately, so is the agenda from Tommy. So the danger there is that he's going to be dragging the movement off in a certain direction with all those numbers if it builds. We need to put our pitch in place now, and we need to say this is the message, come to us. And I think even the ethno-nats right on the other side of us, on our other side, will come to us as well, because, you know, we all know the problems with that position, and you know, adopting it as a foundational view is really the best way to go, in my opinion. So yeah, sorry if I drifted off there a bit, but anyway, yeah, Ed Miliband's a wrong un.
That's all right. Just to clarify what our immigration policy is, we campaign to completely stop giving out UK passports to foreigners. And, you know, if there is an urgent need for some workers for a specific industry, emergency temporary visas could be given. You know, we've had like 20 million kind of foreigners come into the country over the last 60 years. We do not need to give out any more passports. That's one of our main policies. Also, the refugee issue, no more refugees for citizenship. In an ideal world, refugees should be helped, but it's out of control. We cannot even do that as a nation because we're trillions in debt and we've got a housing crisis. If we went back 60 years, yeah, we could have refugee camps temporarily and they're never to be given citizenship, and they would be going home when their country was safe. But this is all off the table now because of the United Nations Refugee Convention, which changed all of that and gave them the right to have citizenship, gave the individual refugee more rights than the whole nation. That is the problem. That's why we're in this mess. And it is probably the United Nations Refugee Convention which is putting people's lives in danger because they're trying to get across the channel to get citizenship here. And they're not. Most of them are not genuine. So, but that's how they're getting in. That's how they're getting in, and that's what's got to be taken off the table. But talking of all this refugee crisis, illegal immigration crisis, whatever you want to call it, the Labour Party have scrapped the Rwanda deal. Right? We didn't even want that deal anyway, but it was something, at least something. They've scrapped that. They've also closed down Bibi Stockholm, the massive barge holding all these asylum seekers, and they're just going to give them all refugee status. So we're talking, there was already 180,000 asylum seekers in the system ready to be processed into given refugee status and then council flats. So they've allowed all the ones what were about to get processed. They're just going to come flooding in now, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. To be honest with you, it's going to help my campaign because we got Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, and we got Khan saying he's going to build 40,000 council flats in London. Yeah, but the majority of the working class cannot even join the council house waiting lists, and I don't understand why Nigel Farage and Reform are not picking up on this, because it is so easy to win votes with, because it's a disgrace that, especially with the Labour Party, they're supposed to be for the working class. I mean, I'm talking about Bangladeshis, Africans, English, whatever it is. I've met loads, thousands, and they are not allowed to go on the waiting list for the council flats. But as we all know, refugees are welcome here. Refugees all the time. There's on every website for every council all around the country, you'll find a little section saying how proud they are that they continue to accept refugees and they're going to give them housing and neglect the UK citizens for the housing. So, you know, it's all up in the air. The Labour, I think they're going to fall apart personally. Keir Starmer may be taken down quite early within a year or two. And who knows what's going to happen after that. You know, it's going to be chaotic in the Houses of Parliament, I predict. But I just want to say hello to some people in the chat. Hello, Serena. Hello, Nick. Hello, Gerald Fisher. Steve Wild. Hello, Steve. Rory Herbert. Good to see you there. Nick Wilson. Nice to see you. Timmy Bobbington. Mark Williams. Nice to see you there. Keep the comments coming in. And just like to remind people, any new viewers, we are the National Housing Party, United Kingdom, and we do our party live stream every Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, with our legendary panel, Paul Rimmer, John Lawrence, and myself, Pat McGinnis. So John Lawrence couldn't make it tonight, and our party's going very well. We've got a few candidates now, you know, what we're focusing on. I'm going leafleting on Saturday in South London for Pauline Everest's campaign in Mitcham. We're very hopeful for the 2026 London local elections, because people don't realise when you go knocking on doors in London, I very rarely meet people who like Labour. They are winning all these elections with a very small minority, and all it needs is a solid campaign to be put in, and we can take the seats from them. I'm convinced with that. And the most important thing, we've got the best weapon of all, and that is Jesus Christ. Because every time I go out canvassing, I pray for protection, to guide me, to give me the motivation. And, you know, our country is a Christian. It was built as a Christian nation, and all of our flags have got Christian crosses in them. So I don't care what anyone says about, oh, we're not a Christian nation. We are. And, you know, and I think a lot of people want stability. They want a kind of Christian society brought back, because it is so chaotic now. You know, there was a stabbing today in Seven Sisters. 2 women were arrested for stabbing a bloke up, possibly dead. I don't know what happened. But this is at 9 a.m. in the morning on a train. You know, like, I don't know what the story is, but this is what's going on in our society. And I think it's not a coincidence that Christianity has been removed from our society. So, yeah, that's about it for me.
Let me just say, Pat. Yeah, let me say 2 things. I mean, well, there's 2 things here. First of all, the Labour balloon will burst very quickly, because every Labour policy is wrong, and it's going to cause chaos. Increasing immigration. I mean, Labour keeps saying they're going to build millions of houses and they're going to give accommodation to all these immigrants. That would cost tens of billions. It would put an extra 100 billion on the welfare bill. Labour is going to mushroom the welfare bill, but there's no money. We're 2 trillion in debt, at least. The interest payments on our debts are going up all the time. We're facing a recession. Labour thinks they can increase taxation. They're going to increase the inheritance tax. They're going to increase the council tax. They're going to increase a lot of taxes, but that stops growth in the economy. That hits people hard. And it's going to be dissension. As Peter said, it's going to bubble up. Now, there's going to be dissension within the Parliamentary Labour Party. It's already starting to develop now over this, because they've got this 2-child benefit cap. A large fraction of the Labour Party, the left, want to remove that. But Keir Starmer is being told by the Treasury, there's no money in the kitty, and you can't raise more debt because the interest rates are too high. The interest payments were going to cripple this country. We're going to face a financial and fiscal crisis very quickly under Labour. We're going to face an international crisis very quickly under Labour because of their commitment to support Israel and support Ukraine. In 2 wars, Israel can't win. It can't defeat the Arab world, but it's stirring up the Arab world. Ukraine cannot defeat Russia, and Russia is now. I don't know if you've heard this thing called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is an alliance of 30 nations in Asia, including China, including India, including Pakistan, including Iran, including Russia, including Kazakhstan, including Syria, with Turkey and Saudi Arabia. They're all linked together now in a military alliance against the West. The Chinese army has been maneuvering in Belarus on the Polish border. I mean, the idea that we can defeat, this is 40% of the world economy. This is 50% of the world's population. The idea that we can defeat a foe this big is absolutely absurd, because the West is being destroyed, and this is the second part, what Peter mentioned, by the woke agenda, the destruction of our Christian heritage, the loss of values in the West, which is leading to a collapse in the birth rate, the breakup of the family, the pushing of these transgender, LGBT, etc., all these agendas which are corrupting our nation, are poisoning our nation, and people are very disturbed by this. And there's going to be a kickback against that. And this is, again, you see, they brought in, I don't know how many Muslims there are in this country now. There might be 4 million, there might be 5 million. But they brought in this massive Muslim bloc, and all they're doing is agitating this group, irritating them, by launching wars against Islamic countries, by attacking basically faith values. They're agitating this bloc. I mean, George Galloway, he was onto something, because he has gone against the woke agenda, and he's gone against this Zionist war agenda. And he should have done a lot better in the general election. I mean, he backed independents. I think they got 4 independents in, but he only stood 150 candidates. One of the reasons they call a general election early was because of when he went up into Parliament and he said, I'm going to stand 500 candidates in a general election, they pressed the panic button because the Tories and Labour are two cheeks at the same backside. The Tories simply passed the baton to Labour, and we're going to get more taxes, more immigration, more wars. It's not going to be a different Labour government. It's going to be the worst of the Tory government, made even worse. And then a slight honeymoon period at the moment, it will disappear. Now, if Reform doesn't step up to the plate and challenge them, as you said, Pat, on these fundamental policies like housing, like the anti-white agenda, like the pro-war agenda, Reform will quickly wither on the vine. You've got to challenge them on these fundamental policies. That's what the National Housing Party is about. We represent a truth-speaking party in a period. I mean, what Peter said right at the start, we now live in a clown world. The people who rule us just tells lies, they manipulate, and they do bizarre things. We've got to have a rock in this nation on which people can find and build something of worth, and that's what the National Housing Party is about. Over to you, Pete.
Let me just say one thing, Pete. Pete, one sec. So, just want to clarify for the viewers about Reform UK and NHPUK. So, Reform UK keep saying they want to leave the ECHR, right? They will not go near the 1951 Refugee Convention. This is how all these people are getting in at Dover. They're claiming asylum using the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. That gets them into the country, and then the ECHR prevents them from being deported. Yeah, so we need to be leaving both of them. But Reform, on all their literature, they say they will process refugees. So that means they will continue to accept refugees. They keep using the Australian points-based system, which accepts around 25 to 30k plus refugees a year. We do not want that. We are a tiny island. We're full up. We're trillions in debt. We're on course to become a minority. We're in a housing crisis, and Reform still want to accept refugees. I just don't understand it. It is baffling because, they could win much more votes, I think, if they would just say, look, actually, no more refugees want to leave the Refugee Convention. But the reason they won't go near that convention is because of the misleading anti-white term anti-Semitism. They'll be accused of what happened in 1945. Oh, it's all your fault. You would be the ones who wouldn't let. Yeah. So anyway, I'll leave that one to you, Pete. Over to you.
Well, I mean, the 1951 convention is the thing that's causing loss of life in the Channel. I mean, let's face it, and that was the main pitch that I was coming back to people on when they challenged me on it. I said we need to redefine what a refugee is. We need to go back to the original definition of it. And we have an obligation to help these people, and we have an obligation to stop bombing their countries as well. And, but we have to go back to, we are full. We've got to go back to the position where if a conflict arises, we have to help those people move to the closest country to them that's safe passage. And it makes perfect sense just in terms of time and motion study, because post-conflict there's less, required to get back there. But it's Article 31 from the convention, which allows you passage in with falsified documents. So this is the loophole that the people traffickers are using, because you can come here with no documents or fraudulent documents, and you can be here on illegal entry, and you still have the right to claim asylum. So the whole thing is just a mess, and it's hard not to. Well, it is a deliberate plan, in my opinion. So. But anyway, moving back to the appetite for change within the electorate, just talking briefly about the independents. The independents, actually, there were twice as many standing in this election compared to 2019, and they gained 3 times the vote. So in one election cycle, that's quite a big shift. I mean, they almost took the amount of votes as a mainstream party, the SNP. They're only a couple of 100,000 short when they're all combined. So in one 4-year cycle, that just goes to show how much people want to get away from this uni-party state that they're finding themselves in, and localism and local representation and politics of identity is clearly coming through. The data is showing it in the independent results. So that's an encouraging sign as well. So the time is right. The time is, we are coming to the time where we need to just pull it all together and form a movement. And we need to talk at some point, obviously, about perhaps making some kind of umbrella organisation, in my opinion, of the other parties who are occupying this same part of our political space, and then see what we can do with that. But, for now, we need to stick with targeted candidate areas and just keep putting our message out there and deal with it from there. But yeah, it's not going to be a pretty ride. It's going to be bumpy, and expect some big energy bills. And the 33rd Olympics is on the horizon. So my bunker's full of food and water.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate. Yeah, this local election politics is not an enjoyable thing. It's very slow. It's very, it's a long-term project. It's not like an instant gratification, but once you get into it and you start knocking on the doors, you do really get something out of it. When you talk to all the different people, you get a small number who might be a bit aggressive with you or whatever, but it's easily dealt with, and it's a really enjoyable experience. I mean, it's nothing to be scared of. You knock on the door, you got their name, you ask them, is that you on the sheet? They say yes, so they know that you know who they are. They're not going to do anything that bad to you, and most of them are just happy to have a chat with you because they're so sick of the Lib Lab Con. Well, especially Labour, where I live, they are absolutely sick of them. A lot of the people voted for this Feinstein character. He stood as an independent, and he took about 7,000 to 8,000 votes off of Keir Starmer, purely on the Gaza issue. And I was asked about him a couple of times yesterday, and I said, look, I'm not a fan of Israel, but I'm not a fan of Feinstein either, because he was an MP in the ANC government in South Africa, and he's basically part of the anti-white agenda, thinks everyone's racist and everyone's Islamophobic, everyone's this, that, the other. So I'm not keen on these people, because all this politically correct language has been used to destroy our country. And anyone who uses this politically correct language is part of the anti-white agenda, in my opinion. And so, it's all interesting stuff. And if you want to stand in local elections, and even if you're just thinking about it, please contact us and speak to us about it. We can talk to you. You don't have to. You can just ask a question about it. Or if you want to help us leaflet, get in touch in Cornwall for Pete. He's going to probably be doing some leafleting soon. Leafleting in London. We've got multiple wards in London that we're going to need a lot of leafleting done in the next six to 8 months. So it's all good stuff. I absolutely love it. I've been in this since 2012, local elections. I personally think that Social Democratic Party, the Heritage Party, UKIP completely wasted their time and money standing in that general election. Between them, they've probably done about £1 million, and it should have been all channeled into local elections for all their other candidates. Concentrate on that, and then once they've got enough council seats in whatever area it is, you go for the 2029 elections. So I just think it's all very positive. I think this is probably the best time for anti-establishment nationalist patriotic parties to stand in elections. This is probably the best time in history since the Second World War, because most of the time you didn't have a chance to beat Labour or Conservative most of the time. But now it's going to be all up in the open. So we need people to join. If you don't want to join our party, go and join another party. We need to stop permanent settlement immigration. We need to stop accepting refugees for citizenship. Our country is collapsing. So we need all hands to the deck. Come and help us. Come and join the party. Even just by joining the party is a massive motivational thing for us. £22 a year on the website, nationalhousingparty.uk. Or if you're unwaged, £11 a year. If you're old age pensioner, veteran, things like that. We've got really good policies for veterans. Check our policies out. We've got housing policies. We're going to be putting some farming policies up soon, and economics policies and energy policies. So over to you.
What I would say is that we campaigned in the Wirral, and people were just so relieved to meet somebody who represented a different voice, a political voice. The mainstream parties, the Lib Dems, the Labour, Tories, are basically abandoned the people in this country. At local level, you don't see them. Even the local councillors, people didn't know what the local councillor was. Issues that were arising, they had no way to access their local councillors, and their local councillors showed no interest in them. They're all part of these party machines. So there's a real appetite there for like people's representatives, but the people have got to get organised. The people have got to join the National Housing Party, small parties, cause them to grow so we can become genuine populist organisations representing the true interests of the people of these islands, because we're going to have a peasant rebellion very quickly. Now, I said earlier that the Labour balloon will burst very quickly, and we've got to look at what will cause that balloon to burst. There are so many different issues, but Labour is not in touch with the common people of this country. When Labour say things such as refugees are welcome here, that doesn't resonate with local people. That isn't from local people. But local people don't want these people imposed upon them to take away their social housing and to invade our welfare state. It's costing this country an arm and a leg to pay for this mass immigration, bogus refugees, and we just can't afford it anymore. Never mind that we haven't got the space, we haven't got the money. But local people are sick and tired of having to pay taxes and getting shoddy services. And we're seeing things such as the NHS and schools, they're all in decline. Now, this is all about the woke agenda as well that has infested our schools now and is leading, because they're moving away from Christian values and from our history. Everyone's lost. We're like adrift. We need a centre again. This is what the National Housing Party is about. We return to our traditional values, our Christian values, which are good. The difference between right and wrong. We are pro-children, pro-birth. We are pro-family. We're patriotic. We believe in borders. This is why the Tory party has collapsed, because the Tory party is a wide coalition, but there are two things it needs. One is the defence of the realm, defence of our borders. The Tory party lost that. They've allowed mass immigration and mass refugees to flow in, and that's really disillusioned a lot of people. So the Tory coalition collapsed on that issue, and it also collapsed on the issue of values. The Tory party has become woke, and that has disturbed a lot of people. The Tory party was a traditional party, a Christian party, stood up for traditional British values, but it's cast those aside now. Why didn't the Tory party put an end to Labour's Equality Act, which basically discriminates against white heterosexual people? They didn't. The Tory party committed themselves to that act and has carried on the cancer which is destroying this country. That's why the Tory party, as a broad coalition, has collapsed and it won't reform. Now, it's up to reform to grasp that and to come up with the right policies. But as Pat said earlier, they're tiptoeing around these issues, and they need to accept that the British people want change. I mean, in America, the migrant army is a grassroots movement which has taken over the Republican Party. It's not a top-down movement. Trump has been sustained in America because he's been carried on the shoulders of the MAGA army. This is a real people's movement, and we've got to have one in this country to survive as a people. Just to, because we're going to be pushed out of our comfort zones, from Cornwall to London, up to Scotland, right across the British Isles. We're seeing this in Ireland especially. People are being pushed out of their comfort zones, and you're going to have to stand up, defend everything you have, because otherwise it's going to be taken away from you. Peter?
Well, they say that nothing will change while the bread and circus is still flowing, and I can't see a stop to the circus, but I can see a stop to the bread coming, because we are facing increased food security risk. There's no doubt about it. Now, that will at least, at a minimum, mean a continued inflation in food prices, at the very minimum, because we've got terrible wheat harvest this year from the wet winter. We've got more and more pressure on farmland from all sides, from urban development. I mean, Labour are talking about building 1.5 million houses. Well, we only do 200 or so, 100,000 a year. So that's like 7 years worth of house building at the current rate. Well, where are they all going to go? You know, we've got solar panel farms and wind farms and housing. We lost 2.2% of our agricultural acreage in 2022 alone in 1 year. So, you know, they're mucking about with the weather. They're causing heavy deluge rain. They're making it difficult for farmers. Farmers are going bust left, right and centre. I mean, we've got a third more agricultural land on the market in the first 6 months of this year than last year. But the outstanding part of that data is it's actually large farms that are selling up. So there's the highest percentage of large farms actually selling. So it's not just the small guys going, we'll take early retirement because we can get better money by doing a carbon offset forestry scheme or something else like that. It's actually big enterprises going, do you know what? We just can't handle this high interest rate environment, this lack of protection from the government. We got lack of proper import tariff price protection. We don't get protected when global commodity prices plummet. There's no minimum price guarantee for us. The agricultural budget has been defunded. I mean, we had more money in 2019 when we were in the EU. We had 4.7 billion, I beg your pardon, 4.7 billion. So in today's money, that's 5.7 billion adjusted for inflation. And we're getting 3.7. Where's the other 2 billion gone? You know, and then in actual fact, there's some big green groups recently coming out, the RSPB, the National Trust, and they're making the same point as me. They're saying, oh, we're about 2 billion short on where the budget is, and we need it to complete all this wilding stuff that's going on. And I'm tearing what's left of my hair out, going, no, we don't need that extra 2 billion to have more trees put in. We need it to support the farmers, because we got food shortages coming down the line, and as you guys both know, I'm part of a campaign group down here in Cornwall, the campaign, and we've got a lead campaign at the moment called Food Security First, and our group is getting big traction. Everybody we talk to is going, well, I think you've got a point there. We are heading for food security issues. At the minimum, you know, maintained price inflation on it. And, you know, in our group, we've got over 2,000 members, and we only started in March. So, you know, food security will be a thing that could wake the people up as well. So, you know, be aware. That's all I would say, you know. And the government talk nonsense about this. You know, when you study the food report, they're bound by the 2020 Agricultural Act to produce a report every 3 years on the UK food security. The 2024 one's just come out. I'm about to go through it. But in the 2021 report, they say that they say things like the UK's food security is bolstered by us importing our produce from a wide range of suppliers, and we only allow a maximum of 11% from a single country that we can import into. That's their definition of food security, that we shop around the globe at lots of different countries. You know, forget about growing the stuff ourselves. I mean, they say themselves that we're about 54% self-sufficient in what we could be, and we could be 75 if we maxed it out. But I'll tell you now, we are way lower than 54% when you take into account full circular self-sufficiency, because if we can't even produce our own fertilizer, produce our own feedstuffs, grow on enough of our replacement herd, even have enough of our own diesel, then we're not self-sufficient at all when you take into account the full circular self-sufficiency of what is required in all the inputs to go into agriculture. And agriculture is a high input business. You need to put a lot of energy and stuff in to get stuff out. I would put us more at about 30% food secure.
All these real problems, Peter, are going to get worse and worse under Labour. Don't forget, our population is going through the roof. So food demand is going through the roof. And we're destroying our agricultural economy. We're taking the land away. Now, what is really unique about this general election in 2024, July 2024, was that normally the general election reflects the will of the people. I.e., the people want a Tory government, they want a Labour government. This general election did not reflect the will of the people. The total Tory and Labour vote was just over 50%. Labour got a whopping majority with just a third of the vote, and as you said, 13% of the population. Most people were disillusioned with the established parties. We saw the independents vote surge. We saw the vote for reform, 4.2 million. We saw the vote for the Workers' Party and their allies. There's a lot of dissent out there, and that has not been addressed. Half the country are against the Lib-Lab con. They want a different politics in this country. And this general election, because of the first post system, it hasn't allowed them to express their will. So it's a false result. And it's a party, a Labour Party, which has got absolutely diabolical policies, which is going to make everything worse. So when you look ahead, there's no hope there. There's no room for optimism there, because we're going to get higher taxes. They're already pushing the tax burden up on ordinary working people. We're going to get much higher immigration, even though our population has already exploded and there's no space. You talk about building 1.5 million houses. We haven't got the construction workers. We haven't got the space. We haven't got the materials to build that many houses. It's all an illusion, and it's all going to come crashing down very quickly. And what is really going to destroy this Labour government is their imperialistic war ambitions in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe. We don't want any part of that. There's no popular will behind that at all. This Labour Party is going to fall flat on its face very quickly. And we've got to be in there as a dissenting voice and an option for the people. Pat?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Paul. And thanks for everyone who's been watching. Great stream. Got 165 watching. We're on Twitter now, on my Twitter page, which always gets quite a lot of viewers. So just thanks to everyone in the chat. A big hello there to David Burnett for all your comments there. And everyone else, Mark Williams, Gerald Fisher, Serena. Who else we got there? Tommy Trump, Steve Wild. All the usuals. Good to see you all there. Rory Herbert. So I just want to reiterate why we describe ourselves as a Christian nationalist party, because we've got policies that want to create a Christian nationalism. So we've got a policy to reintroduce Christianity into our schooling systems. We've got nationalistic policies like banning foreign ownership of property and land in our country. We want to leave NATO because NATO is a globalist organisation. NATO is the military arm of globalism, which is a vicious anti-white and anti-Christian organisation. We've got other nationalistic policies like nationalising the railways because they're owned by all foreign companies, the electricity, the railways, and these industries are too big to have a fair and competitive market to bring the prices down for the public. So check our policies out on our website. And also, we will say what a real British person is. Someone like David Lammy is not a British person. He's a British citizen. He would be welcome to join our party. But we're not going to be saying, that's identity theft. What's happened is identity theft en masse. Like they've made being British nothing, basically, because they say anybody can be British. We don't say that. And we are a Christian nationalist party. There are other nationalist parties who don't want to work with ethnic minorities, and that's fine, but we do. We are happy for ethnic minorities to join our party and help us achieve our long-term goals, which is stop permanent settlement immigration, stop giving out UK passports to foreigners. Should never happened in the first place, but it has. But we want to rectify it, and we believe we can salvage something for our nation. We are not doom and gloom. We are positivity with Jesus. Jesus is the light, and we will march to victory. So thanks for everyone who's watching. Do you want to say a last couple of things, Pete and Paul?
Well, I would just say second to that, and if anybody is considering running, even for a parish council, please consider it. I'm came into this as a complete beginner, literally 5 weeks before the election. And I don't consider myself a confident public speaker in any way whatsoever. I've got very limited knowledge of, of geopolitics and all the other areas. And I was really on the fly with certain questions, at the hustings, but I managed to get through it, and it's given me time to study and get up to speed. So anyone can do it. Have a go. Paul.
Yeah. Peter, you're a Christian warrior. Well done. And I'm very hopeful for the future because of people like Peter, people who want to stand up for our nation, people who stand up for Christian values. And this is the party for you, the National Housing Party. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, then. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, catch us next week, every Tuesday, 8 p.m. on YouTube. We've got 2 channels, NHPUK TV and NHPUK Press Office. So keep an eye on those 2 channels. We've had some viral videos recently. And get us on Twitter as well. Paul Rimmer's on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. Pete's big on Facebook. He's got the Farmers... What's it called, Pete? The Farmers Group?
It's Farmers Movement Cornwall.
Farmers Movement Cornwall on Facebook. So go and join that group if you can. And, the farming issue is going to be a big part of our party's message as well, because a country can't survive without farmers, as simple as that. So I'll leave it there. And thanks for everyone who was watching. And Jesus Christ is King. God bless you.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.